So guys, hopefully you can see me. Let me just get myself on the light. So folks, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who watch on YouTube and now getting used to watching on a YouTube channel, welcome as well, wherever you're watching from. I know a lot of you watch here live, and a lot of you actually go to the recordings later. It's fine. Whatever works for you is what we're here to help with. Now, a couple of interesting things. Deborah is this morning our guest in this discussion on customer-centric, and really we're talking about privacy and compliance in that area of things. So Deborah is the Chief Privacy Officer of Rogers Communication. You got a pretty good background coming from the federal government and at Rogers many years. Obviously, she doesn't hold this job for the heck of it. She is a very capable person, and therefore she's also got a pretty solid background. So we won't take up time for you on that, but I will attach it again as we do with the recordings, so you can see that. Now, a couple of things before we get started on the discussion. I got some interesting questions, and you may have some. I think one may already be coming through. Let me just make sure. Okay, it's just Derek welcoming you. So here, Derek, I passed your message. Two things. Yesterday, as we had a post on your discussion this morning, Tofi Saliba, who is a guru in not just artificial intelligence, but a few places, he commented something very interesting, which many of us think, but we don't think it in the manner that he articulated, which I thought would be very good to put it out there straight, which is that if you're an organization and you lose some sales, you can work hard and get your sales up. If your share value is down, you can work again at it and get the share value back up again. What you can't do is when you lose your privacy identity, it's gone forever. And we have seen that. So I thought I would share with you what I think is a pretty powerful story and then get it going. And I'm going to now address a lot of corporate leaders in this and the federal government. Is when I was leading, as people know, I had internal audit, risk management, security at all governance area for Visa globally. I had met for lunch a head of a bank, actually in Canada. So, and we had been trying to convince them at the board meetings about taking the fraud and risk management seriously. And it didn't matter what business case we kind of put together, but it was not going anywhere. So after lunch, I dropped that person back to the office, and that person was in fact traveling overseas for holidays. Well, at the hairdresser that afternoon, the person's credit card actually got compromised. Now, it was pretty shocking because what it ended up doing was messing up the holidays and all sorts of things. We had to run around and help that person block the cards and fraud that had occurred already in just space of 3, 4, 5 minutes at that barber's place. Point I'm trying to make is the view of that person changed drastically. I did not need a business case to convince this person, and there were CEOs joking about it, that maybe we should have everybody's card hacked and they will find out. So the federal government, who is responsible for this, and the leaders who are actually making policies, I'm addressing this to you. That think about it, just because it doesn't happen to you, doesn't mean it can't happen. A, and B, sometimes you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people when it happens as to how it can turn your life upside down. So we need to take privacy very, very seriously. Now that actually is a perfect setting for me to get Deborah into this and have her comment. So given that that's an example of how it can turn your life upside down, and you deal with this every day because you're the largest telecom, but even your experience goes broader than that. How do you think the customers fitting into this or not fitting into when these policies were either done by the government or corporate world? What are your views on that?
So you're going to start out with a really small question?
Yes. That's why it opens, it gives you a chance to go. And it will come back. I've got quite a few there.
I was thinking about this morning as I was having my tea and listening to the rain, because I don't know what it was like where you're currently sitting, but it was really dark and rainy this morning when I got up, and I was thinking about our seminar, and I was thinking, the customer perspective on privacy. And I think, we all know that famous quote from a few years ago that goes around all the time: data is the new oil. And sometimes I wonder about that, because yes, data is important, data is rich, you get a lot of insights from data, but I think once you commoditize, you make it a commodity, you make someone's personal information a commodity, you actually take the personal out of it. Because from a customer perspective, and we see this with our customers all the time, there's a spectrum. So for example, I might not care that my loyalty app knows that at the grocery store where I'm getting points because I really like my free groceries. I might not care that they know that I buy a lot of cheese. And I might not care that they know that my favorite bread is sourdough, and that, particularly during the COVID, I was buying my parents' groceries too. So I bought a lot of things like cauliflowers and cabbages. So probably gave them a skewed idea of really but I might not care that they know all that about me. But I may care that my loyalty program for where I buy my coffee is tracking my location, right? So it's sort of this spectrum, and it's almost like the controls of, if we let our customers have more input and we let our customers be more involved in controlling their data and what can and cannot be done, I think that builds a level of trust with customers, and it really helps. I know I'm getting a little off your specific question.
No, it's fine.
I will come back to, but I think that's important to, bake your customers into and maybe not let them make the decisions, but you put yourself in the customer's shoes, and you're baking that into the decisions that you make. And it's also really important that, you and I have spoken about this at length. I don't think necessarily that our federal privacy law is broken, but I do think that it's in desperate need of some sort of modernization and updating, because customers, their opinions and their thoughts and their views, they've all changed over time. So in the 5 years I've managed privacy at Rogers, I've gone from, so I have a privacy mailbox for our customers if they need to contact us, from maybe getting 1 or 2 or 3 emails a month to getting, in 1 month, getting 300 or 400 emails of customers just wanting to know, what do you do about this? And what about this? And where can I find more information about this? So we've gone, and another thing where we're looking at putting ourselves in the customer's shoes, we've gone from having a very basic privacy page on our website of, here's our privacy policy, because we're going to be transparent. I use that word loosely with our customers. So, disclose our privacy policy with them, to saying, we actually have to give our customers more. They need to understand. So for us, as a large telecom wireless service provider, we do track location of customers, because that's how we deliver the service to them. So we need to know what cell tower they're closest to deliver that, or that they're no longer in Canada and they're in France, so they're roaming. So then, the network or the phone calls can hand off to our roaming partners. So from that perspective, so we're putting more on our website so customers understand that. What does it mean by I'm tracking your location? And what is de-identified or anonymous or aggregated? Use any word in there. What does that mean for our customers? So we've gone sort of this full circle in 5 years from, here's our privacy policy, to what can we do to enhance and bring our customers into the equation? Because it's all really about building trust. To your point and the example you gave of the compromised credit card. So, now you're in an environment of breaches are happening all the time. There's people trying. Fraud is super prevalent. We saw it a lot during COVID. How many COVID-related scams or people getting phishing, social engineering, what have you. So it's all about building that trust. So what do you do after the breach? Are you doing the right things for your customers in order to let them think, okay, well, my service provider had a breach or had a privacy incident or have a whatever, but they did the right thing and they handled it well. So I'm confident that this won't happen again, or if it does happen again, they're going to do the right thing. So the customer then still feels that investment with you as a company to stay with you and slog it out with you as you're doing battle with the fraudsters for them. And for us as a company, probably getting way off topic now, but for us as a company, you mentioned we're, one of Canada's largest telcos. There's a lot of information we have about our customers, and we need them to know and feel confident that we're trusted stewards of that data. They've entrusted that personal information with us to provide them the services that we're providing to them. And they need to know that it's a partnership and we want to do the right thing and do the right thing by them. So, I mean, I've sort of circled around what you were asking, but that's, I think, the basic premise that we operate under.
But it's true. Well, one of the interesting things you said, which is legitimate, by the way, I have to say, you could have been a fantastic politician, because your answer about PPD not being broken was very well put. I mean, yes, it's in desperate need of creating. We all agree with you completely there.
I see Derek's in the chat has asked if the lack of enforcement makes PIPEDA broken. And I mean, Derek and I banter about this quite a bit. I don't actually necessarily think that enforcement is the only way to incent compliance with a law. So again, it's back to, if we don't have customers, we don't have a business. And with most, sorry, go ahead.
No. There's, you touched what I was going to ask you, which is right. What Derek has said. One of the confusion in the corporate world, in the government, and generally, is that compliance will solve your problem. Exactly where you're going with this. Compliance is a minimum standard. Completely, there's the lowest common denominator, because I can tell you stories when we were putting together PCI and we were going out there to do it, and then we had to bring other people into it to make sure that we were forced to keep lowering the bar, because only way to get everybody in there. So PCI DSS is not the highest standard. The confusion that is out there about PIPEDA and everything else is the corporate mentality of getting a piece of paper and saying, I am compliant, is what you're talking about, and I think what Derek is talking about. It's not going to solve the problem, because you can get pieces of paper. There is every Tom, Dick, and Harry is supposedly PCI compliant. And I can tell you, if I go in there, I'll find out that they're not compliant, because the whole intent was something. So we were forced to write some prescriptive thing, such as, hey, yeah, you got to lock the door. That's not what we meant. We said the word was secure. Now you can go buy a $1 lock from Walmart for dollar store or whatever, put it in, and you met the requirement.
Yeah.
You need to stop people coming. So that's, I think, where we need to go. Is, I think, if that's what he's talking about enforcement, I am assuming that there is violation that we can, by law, certainly attribute to. We've done nothing. That's, I think, where he's going with that.
Yeah, no. No, absolutely. I appreciate that. I think that even with enforcement, where you have a regime where there's administrative monetary penalties of some sort, and you can look at it. I mean, in my career, I've done mostly consumer issues. So I've handled everything from environmental stewardship programs to anti-spam to privacy, so the whole gamut. So I've seen enforcement models in all of those areas, and I think we all know as compliance and privacy professionals that there are those businesses out there that their risk appetite is a little bit more aggressive, if you will, or they're a little bit more I don't want to say less, because again, everyone's risk appetite is their own, but there are business and organizations out there, not ours, but there are organizations out there that will budget for the AMP. So they will say, I I'm innovative, or I'm new, or I'm a rule breaker, and I'm going to go really hard, and how long can I last? And, you know, should I get that fine, whether it be in whatever compliance program you are? I've budgeted for that, and that's my risk appetite. And then there's, on the other side of the spectrum, that there are those that say, actually, I am regulated, and it's not for me to pick or choose what laws I comply with, but more importantly, I need to have the trust of those people who come to me and want to be my customer in order to maintain that. And then they invest really heavily. And then there's everything in between. So that's, I think, what is interesting, particularly in the privacy world. And, you know, it's a point where there is a lot of gray currently in PIPEDA, and it's principle based, and that's great. And to your point, well, what does security mean? So I need safeguards. Well, what does that mean? And it's, everyone, you know, has their own interpretation of that. And, you know, everyone takes it from there. And, you know, I think a thoughtful enforcement model is not terrible, but it really needs to be thoughtful, and it needs to be structured in a way that isn't about penalizing the intentional. I'm really struggling with my words this morning. Those that are the well-intended parties and that want to do the right thing. But let's be honest, no one's perfect. Sometimes there's mistakes. I mean, you know, CRA had their hack over the summer, or their breach over the summer. There was it really at the beginning of COVID, there was that stranded Canadian cruise ship where passport information was emailed sort of out in a not privacy sensitive manner, if you will. So everyone makes mistakes, and it's really, well, were you trying to do the right thing? Were you trying to do that, and then just something went wrong, right? Versus those that are, well, I really don't care. I'm just going to do what I want to do and not pay attention to the law.
This is actually very interesting. And you touched 2-3 very powerful areas, and you'll see my question in a second here. I have been a party to things where we've done reviews in the company, you know, to look at how the employees are treated and how our customers are treated and so forth. And we brought a name, I won't give you the name, but you would recognize it. It's a global company. They came in to do the research when we paid big bucks for it. They interviewed the senior vice president, executive vice president, and so forth. And the report was ready. Now, I was getting very worried at the time that I was not thrilled with the way it was going. So I ran a small parallel review by talking to the cleaner, the photocopier guy, the security guy, the guy who loaded the tapes, the guy who did the programming, the guy, in all the way from bottom up, who were doing the work. 36 of them, or 35 of them worldwide, right, in different countries, and, you know, had made them, make them comfortable, and then got the information. When they had the report that I had did not match in any shape or form with the guys whom we had paid millions of dollars. Okay, the problem was they were talking to the wrong people. So now to the question. The problem in that case was we were at fault equally in spending that money because we wanted to hear a particular outcome, which we had already defined in our heads, that the corporate world doesn't go to the big 4 or 5 companies because they will really want to hear about the problem. They go there to get confirmation of what they already believe, right? So they're covered at the board meeting and wherever the shareholder value people complain, they'll say, hey, we had even the big consulting firms say this is okay. So from that standpoint, one of the things you touched, which is what I was really wanting to drill down on, is the lack of customer input, or the lack of public input is one of the things you just mentioned that they are concerned, is one part, and you can maybe drill down a little further. The second part is where you made, your comment is quite valid, that some people do it because they make mistakes, right? They didn't do it correctly, but they budget for it and whatever. So I found 3 parts in the reviews I did globally in that. I want you to comment on that. One is somebody makes a genuine mistake because they don't understand, right? Second one is they make a mistake, but they don't even understand because they were never trained. In both cases, they were never trained, and the communication never went across. They didn't receive the memo, and they are not just at fault. We are equally at fault because we did not do our job of educating the people. And the weakest link is, your people. The third one, where somebody does know the rules well, but they abuse them deliberately because they know they can get away with it, right? And so, should we in the corporate world looking at privacy not be thinking like that and saying, we got these different elements here, how are we going to deal with that? What do you think about that? The three buckets, right?
Yeah, obviously there are those buckets. There are definitely I really think in the privacy world, everything is really a spectrum. I think what I'll start by saying is, so for me I'm not necessarily, I'm a privacy professional, but I'm not really a compliance because I don't monitor compliance. I don't have controls that I'm testing against inside. And that's left to other people in our company, risk management and stuff. But I think that in order to get that happy medium, because there is that happy medium between those three buckets, and it's that sort of even keel, that level, everything is just, there's no ripple in the water and you're going along. It's all about the partnerships that you have with your operational and your business units. So I have a bit of a practice that I rarely to never say no to my business when they come with a proposal, because I don't want to be that roadblock for them. And I don't want to be the one that is, the terrible regulatory person who doesn't get it and doesn't understand the business. And I want to be a partner with them. So I always have it's the regulatory trick of in the alternative. I don't like your idea, but if you're going to do your idea, like in the alternative, that's how we do, trade secrets. That's how we file regulatory submissions as well. No, I don't want you to do this, but if you're going to, in the alternative, it should look like this. So I have a practice with my business units of being partners with them when they come to me with a proposal that my eyes have rolled out of my head. I think it's so insane or crazy, and I can't even believe they're coming to me. And I, will always tell them I think it's interesting, and maybe have they thought about doing it this other way, which is the way that gets them to achieve what they want to achieve, but is recognizing the privacy requirements or the here in Canada, the CRTC unsolicited telecommunication rules, which I also oversee, or the anti-spam legislation, which I also oversee. So, it's interesting, but have you tried this? And I think that if you get that, that's A, ensuring compliance. It's B, educating your business units and your partners on what it is that they need to do to comply. And it's sort of giving you that even. It's also important, we delayed it a little bit this year because of COVID, but we have mandatory training, right? So it's also important that you have that privacy training. So we have the privacy training. I toy every year with asking my general counsel, who I report into, whether or not I can start fining the business units who don't get over a certain level of participation. He's yet to give me the authority to generate revenue for my team that way, but I digress. So
very important point you made.
I think that the worst bucket, though, that you've outlined is that one that is, I just don't care. And I think that those businesses that are the I just don't care are the reasons why regulators look for stronger enforcement, and they look for more prescriptive regulations, because they see the I just don't care bucket. And I personally don't think the just don't care bucket is that large, particularly here in Canada, but there is that I just don't care bucket of businesses. And I think that they're the ones, there is that phrase of, one bad egg ruins it for the rest of them. So there is that bucket, which is what is driving regulators to just assume that businesses need that strict enforcement, the stick for compliance. But really, there's other there's other stronger sticks in businesses, like having your name splashed over the front page of your, your national newspaper for not doing the right thing. No CEO wants to wake up over their coffee and be seeing that happening.
That is actually true. It's very interesting. Couple of very important points you made, and the issue around don't care, and there may be few, but the problem is not the fact that they're few. The fact that they have significant impact is one of the biggest problems. So I give you an example in that in the corporate world, and there's a report which I don't know is going to be made public, but a significant amount of security people have crossed over to the wrong side. That doesn't mean there's a confusion in people's head. That doesn't mean they left your company. They are still your chief information security officer, or they may be a significant important person there, but they're collecting your salaries from you, but they're working for the other guys. This, what I'm saying, I know what the heck I'm talking about, because I've interviewed some of these people working globally with these guys, and I'm seeing the same thing happen again. So this I'm talking about is current in the last 12 months. So now when we go to the privacy side of things, I don't know why they're treated differently, because you can't have security without privacy, and you can't have privacy without security. So now in the corporate world, you mentioned you report to the legal counsel, right? As is the case everywhere that I know. Now, when you go on the security side of stuff, the guy reports to CIO or whatever else, right? And the structure in corporate world is such that they're going like this. In fact, competition within a lot of corporations, within departments, the way we've created a structure. How can it work effectively when anything and everything you want to do, in effect, now has to be done by the systems guys, security people, right? To make sure that you are able to achieve the things you're doing. And he's not reporting to the same place. Do you see that as a challenge in your environment?
It's not in our environment, because we have you're right. So I report into, well, actually the chief regulatory officer reports to general counsel, but that's our structure, and our security report to our chief technology and information officer. So that's where, you're right, that's how we're structured. But we have a very close relationship. Like, there's a really strong understanding that security and privacy have to work symbiotically. So we're backing each other up all the time. So if I get something from a business unit that is selling our services to another business, our wireless services to another business, and I'm reviewing the contracts always come with, the data schedule, which is the privacy schedule, but it's really data and security. So I'm always, this needs to go to this person over there. And if they see something privacy, this needs to go over there. So we spend a lot of time together working as units. So we all know each other's requirements, and we all know the importance. And I mean, sometimes I go to meetings with our security folks and I don't have to say a thing, because they're just making my arguments for me. And it's nice, because they're very aware of, but they're also looking at it too. They are really technical, and some of the things that they say mean nothing to me, and which is really exciting when I say a regulatory acronym and then they ask me what that is, because that rarely happens. But I think it's important that they understand the principles of privacy, and they understand the needs and all. I mean, I'm not required to actually implement the safeguards. I'm just required to tell the company that we need to have the safeguards. Right. It's the same thing. The chief records officer also, well, she reports more in my structure, but again, not the same. But I'm like, my requirement is to tell her, we need to set a retention period, and you need to put a maximum retention period, and you need to say why. And it's nice with privacy, because I touch every business unit in our company, right? So we make it about it being a partnership and getting the people on board to support, same thing. Internal audit are all about privacy this year, right? Because that's what they've deemed to be one of their important areas. But again, they report into finance, but they're still looking, because they're a control, and they're making sure that they're monitoring compliance. So I don't think necessarily that the units have to work together or in the same unit. They just have to work together in that, have a relationship, have a partnership, have an open line of communication, be aware of each other's space. And I mean, if you don't have those relationships with any of your business units, particularly in privacy, it's going to fall apart. So it's all about making sure that you have relationships and you can leverage those internal partners to help you achieve your end goal.
That's very good. It will come to a comment I'll make on this one, which helps your comment there. Derek has asked a question, right? Or a comment, which he's saying in the PPDA, federal government did not actually find ancestry for the fact that it did not have the unsubscribe button under Castle and privacy required to allow people to unsubscribe if they don't want garbage coming in. They didn't do that, which really is not good, because if you're going to put a rule out there, you don't enforce that, you're inviting people to abuse it. So he's kind of talking about, his comment is about the fact that you need wisdom in enforcement, which is actually true. Any comment on that?
Castle and the CRTC and fines is it's something that I feel very strongly about, because I mean, it's no secret, Rogers early in the regime, we were fined under Castle. And again, in that category, we fell into the bucket of well-intentioned, had a technical error, didn't realized it, fixed it, but at the same time, the enforcement team had identified it through some customer complaints and had launched an investigation. So I think we were early in the regime that at that time, it was a learning curve for everyone. I have to think probably even for the enforcement branch at the CRTC. Maybe perhaps it was a learning curve there, because I think prevailing wisdom would say we shouldn't have received the fine we received for what happened, because it was a technical error, it was a mistake, we identified it, we fixed it, we did the right thing. And I think maybe, or at least I hope over time, they have learned too, and they look and they take into consideration other things. I mean, I know now they're issuing more warning letters warning letters and citations rather than going right to the enforcement action and the AMPs. So, I mean, I think it's unfortunate maybe 4 years later, we wouldn't have received our fine with the learning and the wisdom that comes with, to Derek's point, comes with enforcement, because really you have to balance. Are you fining because you just need to fine, or are you fining because there is a systemic problem that can't be fixed any other way? But again, we were one of the first parties to be fined under that piece of legislation. So it wasn't that there was a systemic issue. I just think at that time, at least I hope at that time, they were just finding their feet on how to enforce. And with that, wisdom has come.
And that wisdom is very important because it leads to improvement. And again, I give you a powerful example. When I was the head of internal audit for Visa globally, I found people had broken the rules, bylaws, if you want to call it. Under the normal thing that happened before, we would have penalized, people would have got fired, which was about to happen. When I looked at this, I drilled down further to see what had happened. They broke the rules, but they did the right thing for the organization, given the market situation, what had changed. It would have been the most ridiculous thing to have enforced that part, to actually penalize them or fire them for breaking the bylaws, because the bylaws were broken, not the people. They did the right thing there. They've certainly violated. My life is all. If I was looking at that, look back, I've broken all those rules because they didn't make sense. I didn't get where I got by actually following blindly the things that people had. So I think what the issue here is that where's the process for PIPEDA? Because we know the government has shelved indefinitely the changes and whatever, and it was very good 20 years ago. But like anything else, if it's not dynamic, you don't survive, or it doesn't keep pace. You're in trouble. So it's not addressing the new need. When you have the privacy commissioner first write an open letter to Parliament and yesterday, a day after yesterday, writing another one to the public. We have a problem that either the government's going to turn deaf on this, or I don't know where, because you deal with this thing. Is that problem about the rules? Now we are talking about exactly that you mentioned. Would you be happy with somebody being compliant and piece of paper, or would you be happy the fact that they're doing the right thing, the right behavior? What would make you happy, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair question. For me, I think I'd prefer, I'm just actually wondering if there's an in between of both. I mean, I want my business units to do the right thing, but then I also want them to comply. So it's a bit of both. I don't want them to just blindly comply, because that says to me that they don't understand what they're complying or why they're complying. So, if you have that whole, well, they want to comply because they want to do the right thing. Does that make sense?
I think
blindly sign off on a bit of paper and have a signing officer of the company say, I attest to all of my business units or my employees taking privacy training, as an example. I want him to feel that there is a value to his employees taking privacy training, because it's the right thing to do for the company, for our customers. So it's sort of comply because you think it's the right thing and you understand what you're complying, why you're complying, and what needs to be done to comply. I mean, I think we all do have business codes of conduct training and that kind of thing. And it's like, right. At what point is someone just racing to get through the business code of conduct training because it's just another thing that they know that they have to do? Because if they don't do their business code of conduct training, they'll go on the naughty list with HR, and then they'll get an email and that. So it's like, you want people to do this in a thoughtful, meaningful way where they're actually not just rushing to get through it and answer their 5 questions and get 80% or more to pass their training and print off their little certification for their desk. You want them to do it because they understand the importance of it, and they're actually absorbing the material and understanding it and know that it has an impact on their day-to-day activities.
This is very interesting because, I equate this on the other side, the culture, the thinking, which is that we were finding people who broke the rules at Visa for not doing the right thing in many different areas. I have one of my guys bring me a budget for the following year about how much penalties you're going to make in revenues. And I was blown away. I wanted to almost kick him out of the building, literally, because he didn't get it. What did he get? The penalty was to create a change of behavior. The whole purpose behind that compliance was to change a behavior. If we are going to build it in as a revenue fund, penalties and whatever, then we have failed miserably. Not the other guys have failed, we have failed. So I sat down and I realized that maybe this guy doesn't understand. I need to bring him along. And so I spent a lot of time to explain to him, this is not about charging penalties. It's about getting a change of behavior. If they're paying the penalties, then they don't care. It's profitable still to do the bad thing and pay the penalty, and you'll still make money. The industry, by the way, was pornography, right? So it didn't matter, because whatever we did, they would change the server. We had to deal with it completely differently then. So the issue becomes exactly what you're saying. It can't just be about penalties. It's about educating and doing the right thing, and then. But there is also a part that you mentioned. You mentioned you get 300 emails from people wanting to know, what are you doing with my, privacy, and how are you protecting, what does this mean, which is important. The internal audit role, and I don't know if that's happening on the privacy side because I had both, so it was easier. Actually, I had 3. I had risk management too. The thing was that if they saw an internal audit person, they would run for cover because they want to hide stuff from you. They don't want to tell you because they know that you'll write them up and they'll get penalized and they won't get a bonus, or they could lose a job. Do you find in your area in privacy, either your staff or whoever, when you're going in there, people are afraid to come out clean and say this is going on?
We love internal audit. We actually do. We love internal audit. We think that it helps. So, the challenge is a lot of the things that we do and a lot of the things that internal audit reviews internally has an underlying privacy component. So we might not actually being audited ourselves, although we have our privacy practices have been audited about 3, 4, 5 times. We are part of so many more internal audits internally. They'll be auditing a system, or they'll be auditing a practice in another business unit, and it has a privacy component. So we love our partnership with internal audit. We think that sometimes it helps with us getting our case of why we need a change, or we want to change. And a lot of the times, it's not that the business unit doesn't care, but it's, maybe what we want is not the biggest priority on their list of priorities for the day. But then, sometimes just by happenstance, internal audit goes and looks at something and has a privacy element, and then it isn't maybe even anything we thought about. They've just stumbled across it themselves because they're auditing A and B comes up. So yeah, we love internal audit. We're super open and honest with them. My initial relationship with internal audit was actually not privacy related. It was not another consumer file I have. And at first I was horrified by having an internal audit and the way that they wrote their reports. And I was thinking, well, right now you're going to send this internal audit report to my boss, which basically makes him think I don't do anything every day because you've said that these, compliance practices don't exist. So, but over the years, we've developed a great relationship, and it's a bit of a partnership. I know people fear internal audit, but I mean, I think that businesses, if they start embracing internal audits, they can find that it's a fruitful relationship, and it can help drive institutional change.
I agree 100% with you, because I had to change that culture, because the culture, in fact, I started my career there and left the profession, went to the corporate world because of that very thing. It is now changing in some parts, but then there was a second part to the problem, which I'm not sure how you guys handle. I know how some of the other people do, which is that what are the standards against which they're auditing to start with? What if the rules are not correct? What if the best practices are based on the rules that you have and they really don't meet the bar you want because the compliance standard is the lowest bar? Now internal audit has to think very differently. Unfortunately, I don't know too many people who think like that. If you guys have that, fantastic. But I think they audit against a standard, against a compliance standard to see, okay, you meet the bar, because that's how they're going to be held accountable anyway, right?
True. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I mean, I guess here in Canada, at least, for PIPEDA being principle based, it's a hard, there is, in some areas, there's no hard and fast standard to audit against. But, I think that there's enough best practices in the world that helps supplement internal audit of what they're doing.
Right.
But it is a mind shift, right? It's we've spoken a lot about internal practices for right. privacy and such, but so it's an internal partnership, but for us, it's also an external partnership with our customers.
Right.
In order, again, I'm not that, it's not that we want to download responsibility to our customers, but customers still have a role to play. So, back to my examples that I started out with. So, I've got, as a consumer, maybe I have a number of loyalty apps or what have you, and I'm okay in one scenario, I'm okay in another scenario. But I think that as consumers, and this is me as a consumer speaking, right. Sometimes we just blindly do something. So a couple of months ago, I was renovating my kitchen, and I was looking at various ways to buy kitchens. And when I thought, let me experiment with IKEA. So I go to IKEA, and they've got their planner, kitchen planner, and you go into the IKEA store and you sign up for an app and you do it online. And at that point, I had waited so long just to get a computer. I didn't even care what the terms of service or the privacy policy that I was accepting. You know, it's just like, by checking this box, you're accepting all this. And I just didn't care because I just wanted this whole Saturday afternoon, that was my mistake, I think, IKEA visit over with. But I think, you know, it's incumbent upon us as consumers, and this is, again, me as a consumer, to educate ourselves and be engaged and know what we're doing. And when we're engaging with companies, you know, hold them accountable. Be that person. I mean, you know, be that person who takes an active role in what you're signing up for. So, you know, when I sign up for my loyalty program, and, you know, obviously we all know the big one here in Canada, for groceries, and you get the free groceries and you can look at that. It's like, what's your trade-off? So do I care? Again, to my example, do I care that my grocery store knows that I buy cheese and I like bread and I buy some vegetables and I've got some fruit in my basket? I really don't care, because that's my trade-off. I'd rather, I like getting, at the end of the year, I like getting my $400, the free groceries or what have you. And I don't think that that's sensitive or personal information for me. But there's going to be another consumer out there that does, and isn't comfortable with that level of someone knowing what they're buying and knowing what they're doing. So again, I keep going back to the same theme, that everything's a spectrum and everything is different. And if you start saying things like data is the new oil and make it data a commodity, you're taking out that personal element, and you're taking out the element where the consumer does care. There's certain things I care about. I mean, I might be the worst chief privacy officer personally, because I'm like, I don't care that they know that I buy these groceries. But there's other things that I do care about, and I don't want tracking. Like, I don't like on my iPhone that Siri can listen to me if I don't turn it off. You know, these kind of things, right? But I love my Nest thermostat, and I love my little Google Mini, and you know, so automation, I think, so sometimes is that as a consumer, we start trading. You know, the risk benefit analysis becomes different for every person.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. No, you're not the worst chief privacy officer. You're actually, you're a good one, because you are using common sense approach. It's not all or nothing approach is not what you're doing, which is absolutely right. There is a benefit. One of the reasons why security is failing today, and it's failing badly. I know the people are popping up all over the place about how, you know, what sort of expertise they have on security, but actually there is that big challenge. And one of the problems is that in order to understand that, you need to understand all parts. One of the things that used to frustrate me, and I've been open about that, is people, security guys will come up and saying, no, you can't allow this, and you can't allow that, and you can't do this. What that led to, and I saw it starting in Canada, where people would bypass, right? Because the business wants to get things done, and they said, don't get the security people involved because they'll put roadblocks in your way. That is not the job of security. Security people's job is to help them do it more securely, effectively. But the part that's missing, and that's causing the problem, is the risk management element that you just referred to, because there is risk in everything, right? So you have to think carefully to say, what is the middle ground here? What can I do? The trade-off, you talk about grocery, there's no risk to you. Just because Loblaws or somebody else knows that I like to buy Gorgonzola cheese and whatever, wonderful, right? If maybe they can get the supplies so I won't be messed up, and I go there, they will have enough supplies. So there are benefits to that. What I don't want them to know is what my behavior patterns are, who it is. If there is security, and the approach will be to tokenize this thing so that they know that this person with this number does it, but they don't know who it is. They don't need to know, right? So there are different ways to do this, which I think is powerful. But coming back to a different thing now, because coronavirus has changed the world upside down. It didn't create the problem, as John Ruffalo and all of us are saying, is that no, it did not create the problem, but it exposed them. He's exposed and amplified them. In where you sit now, having to deal with privacy, and you know that more people are working from home, that opens up some new challenges, right? Because when we were in the office, it was easier to get guys in the room together and say, by the way, here's what you're doing. assuming that they all listened to it and understood it as well. How are you now going to deal with it, or how are you dealing with it given the new environment?
It's definitely been a challenge because as a company, we weren't one that was leading edge in work from home. We didn't, people worked from home, but not to the degree it obviously is now. So, it's interesting in order to make sure that there's an appropriate level of privacy training and business code of conduct training and security training that is touching on that. So, we have our standard, but there's newer things, there's newer practices that people need to be engaged with. It's also challenging because there may be at home, so not that there may be, they're at home now, so they've got their personal laptop or work laptops, but then they may, they're working for the first, 6-7 hours of their day, and they're like, well, it's not me, I like to watch TV on a TV, but people do watch TV on laptops, and they're now switching over maybe to Netflix, and they're doing it on their work computers, which, maybe they hadn't done before, maybe they had or hadn't done before, don't know, but there's definitely more of, I think, the blurring of, when you're at home more, you're definitely working harder. I'm working longer days, but I don't think that's what you're asking.
No.
But it is.
Yes.
It is.
No. I'm not asking the fact that you're working long or hard. Is it causing different challenge now from both sides? Right?
Exactly. What I'm saying is, it's always a new thing that comes up. So I don't know whether I'm working longer hours because because the way things were happening, and then suddenly someone says, "Oh, well, what about this?" So I had a email from a colleague of mine in another sector, and she asked, now employees are working from home and maybe not going back to the office for, say, the rest of this year, maybe part to next year, are you thinking about business contact information differently? And as you'll know, under PIPEDA, business contact information is exempt from PIPEDA, but now business contact information is someone's home. So then she was asking me, are you considering their home address business contact information, and are you treating it differently? And I had, we were probably about 5 months into COVID and working from home before she asked me that. And I thought, well, no, I've never actually considered it because it's still someone's home address. So it still has that personal element for them. So there's just every day something new pops up about that, the whole return to work process. My peers and I in various sectors, we talk a lot about what are you planning for return to work and what are this and have you thought of this? So there's a lot, I think, of just new things and there's a new challenge every day. I don't know if I'm really answering what you.
No, you are, because there's a lot of unknown, right?
It's a lot of unknown. There's a lot of unknown, or just things that I never thought about, because even though I'm working from home, I think the standard is you're working from home. Make sure your laptop is secure. Make sure any personal or corporate documents or information that you have is secure and that someone else in your household can't see it. There's those standard things that everyone thinks about in a work from home. But then there's these other things that you think, oh yeah, I never actually thought about that, because even though I'm working from home, it's still my office. So I still should be, taking the same precautions as I normally would.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, it's different. And I think we are feeling our way around as things to change, and we discovered, oops, we haven't thought about that. We haven't thought about this. You mentioned Nest earlier. People are working from home, so clean desk policy takes a new meaning in people's homes because they're working 10 different things and downloading music and got all sorts of junk mail and whatever. But they also have Nest and Alexa and whatever in there. They don't realize you didn't have Alexa in the office, but you do have it at home. That when you are using your credit card numbers and talking about confidential data, that it is being picked up, it is being recorded, and it's going to create bigger challenges than people have realized. And that's what I'm saying, right?
It's so true. I live right in Toronto, so I'm in a pretty residential neighborhood. And at the beginning of COVID, I really desperately just wanted to work outside because, I don't get that luxury. But, as you know, when you're in Toronto, the neighborhoods are pretty close together. So I would try to be on my deck working. And then I would realize, well, 4 or 5 neighbors can hear my conversation. So anytime someone would call me, I would have to pick up and come back inside for the confidentiality. So finally, after about 3 weeks of trying to work from home, I just gave that up. And I just work inside because, you know, it's that whole, I can't have these conversations as much as I'd like to be outside. I can't have those conversations. And, you know, when we open concept at our office, when I would have those confidential conversations at my desk, no one cared because they were having those same conversations and they were on their phone. So they're tuning out everyone else. But I was super paranoid that I'm out there having a conversation. I'm the only one speaking, and my neighbors who are having a coffee on their deck, they're suddenly so intrigued. They probably didn't give 1 second thought about my conversation, but I was just paranoid that they could hear everything I was saying and that maybe I shouldn't have my calls outside.
That's very interesting. And a quick comment, or then I have a very important question for you, is when you look at, you know, people will admit to you that the bad guys infiltrate networks and stay almost 330 odd days to 35, and people are saying, yeah, they stay there, but we haven't suffered any damage. And they go, what the heck are you talking about? What they don't understand is why they are in your network and staying that number of days. They're not staying there because they want to do damage. They want to stay in there to learn your behavior pattern, to understand who's communicating with whom, what type of transactions are going, what type of encryption you're using, so that doesn't matter how much of artificial intelligence you put in there, I can infiltrate that organization because now I know exactly what they're doing. And they go in there and they don't realize there's also internal component, right? So all that will come into play because people were lax in their home, right? Because their kids were using the network and downloading Netflix movies and this and music, and it doesn't come for free, right? It's got malware coming with it. But now you're going to be doing business from there. So it's going to require an incredible amount of thinking differently, taking a step back and saying, hang on, we had to react. Part of the thing is the risk management has not been involved with this, because even the security guys who are, I see conferences, a couple of guys are having conferences and selling whatever they're selling. They don't even know which end is up. And I go, there are people like that. And so is that what it's all about? No, that is yesterday's thinking. You better be looking today, but more importantly to tomorrow, right? Where it's going. This is what you were talking about, which makes so much sense. So if you were put as a chief privacy commissioner, or you were Joe Natale and you were all the, authority to do, what are the 2-3 things you would do to improve this area, and indirectly or indirectly you will improve security, but from privacy standpoint? Open-ended, doesn't matter. You can go wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah, you know, it's a challenge. I've said numerous times to you in different forums that PIPEDA does need some modernization. It does need some improvements. I feel that, I mean, I wish I had a really insightful, enlightened position on this, but, you know, I think that I want to change it, take it a step and not talk about what I would do to change the law or change practices. I think it'd be more, I want to go back to touching what we've talked about throughout today. It's that whole changing behaviors.
Right.
So I think if I were the privacy commissioner, I think that there'd be more in the area of public awareness and public education and developing partnerships. It doesn't, you know, relationships between regulated entities and regulators don't have to be adversarial. They're really about partnerships, and they're really about working together for the same end goal. And what is the end goal of privacy legislation, privacy professionals, organizations? It's really to make sure that consumers and citizens feel safe, maybe transacting in the digital economy and doing all of these things. You know, 5G is coming and things are, you know, moving at nothing's moving at a glacial pace other than privacy reform. So, you know, privacy reform is maybe not coming and it's not keeping pace with what's happening in society. So it's all about maybe developing that partnership between private, public sector to be those ones that are championing the consumer education and championing making sure that customers and citizens are really feeling that they can be active participants in the global digital economy. And, you know, no country wants to lag in that area. So, you know, it's all, again, I'm going to say what I said at the beginning, it's all about trust. And really, I feel like there could be more work done. You know, the privacy commissioner, it's a regulator, but there's also, you know, a component about education and advocacy in just the nature of what they do. So I think that more could perhaps be done in that area. And even, you know, CEOs of companies could be doing that. More transparency with their customers, more openness, more making things simple. It's all, I think we all have the same end goal in any country around the world, in any business sector. It's all about making sure citizenry can be active participants in society, whether that's going from, I mean, we don't do it here, but like online voting to online shopping to all of these different things. And, you know, you have all these new players in the social media market coming on. And I think a lot of the trouble that we've seen around things in the social media space is really that I mean, again, my personal opinion is that maybe there was a lack of openness and transparency and people didn't know what they were participating in and weren't making those informed choices. So it's not 2 or 3. I think it's just that one big thing. You need to make sure that those people, and that also it's all about like digital literacy. You don't need someone to be left behind. So that's, I think that's my final take, my final plea about us all being partners in this and working together, because the end goal is a citizenry that is enabled and can participate in the digital economy, and that, you know, we can still advance in that area.
I think it's fantastic. What you convinced me today is that we need a part 2 to this discussion, because there's a hell of a lot here, and we will do that. And by the way, folks, you are actually participating on the panel on September 27th or 23rd, the email forum with the 22nd, right? Yes. So you're going to, so people have a chance to either attend that and hear Deborah deal with some of these issues there with Derek, like he's leading that. And it'll be fantastic. I think this has been very, you know, informative education. We, as the good book says, in teaching you learn, in learning you teach. And so we always benefit from that. So Deborah has covered some pretty interesting areas in terms of customer-centric customer input, legitimate use of data, like she talked about when you check the cell phones, you have to do that. That's a legitimate use. There's no abuse there. Involvement of secure risk management, education, public awareness being very important, which is really building trust. She covered the partnership with internal audit and other areas, which is also significantly important. That means you need almost joint kind of bonuses and reviews done in organizations. So one doesn't benefit if the other fails, right? That's the key. Everybody succeeds when the whole and public awareness. So there's a lot more here that we didn't drill down because I thought we would have a lot more time than because this is a very interesting subject. But I think it looks like we may have to do a part 2, and we will. Deborah, you've been fantastic. I really, truly appreciate your taking time to do this.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. You know your stuff well, and you do a good job of getting it across. So that's super. And so we will work with you to do a part 2 of this. And on behalf of BIZTEK board, the entire group, Think You Betters and advisory board, I want to thank you for doing this. We will record and make it available hopefully this afternoon, that we can all share, because there's some really good stuff that you have talked about here, so that people will benefit. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All the best. Let me just stop the stream. There we go. I just did that.